So good morning, and today was a little bit breezy, so it really wasn't a boating day, but it's probably a great day because it's not too hot here in Florida to do some work on the boat. So my last video, I replaced the impeller, and I kind of did it more of a, not only to show you how to do it, but also so you can kind of gauge whether it's something you should feel comfortable doing or not. Today we're going to tackle the thermostats. I've never done this job before. I've never even looked to see where they were on this boat. I did look at a couple of videos from other people that have done thermostats on different models. I haven't found one on this particular model, and so this might be a little slower because I might have to kind of look to see what I have to remove and what I don't have to remove. What I'm anticipating for tools today is a flathead screwdriver, a pair of needle nose pliers, a ratchet, an extension, a universal swivel, and a 10mm socket. But most of the other things is just a matter of like unplugging things here and there. And if you feel comfortable with a power strip, plugging in a VCR and a television or a game and then unplugging one, that's about the equivalent of what you'd need to do for prior experience to do this type of job. So wish me luck, and let's get started. Okay, so every engine is going to be a little bit different. This right here is a 2008 F250, and but the thermostats are still a thermostats. The parts are going to look the same, and they're all going to be in a housing. So really the difference is going to be how much stuff do you have to move out of the way to get to the bolts to be able to remove it. A lot of it's just going to have to look at it first and kind of decide what has to come off, what doesn't. Sometimes it's easier taking something off and getting at something versus trying to work around it. So you got to make that decision yourself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to time this, and we're going to see how long this takes me to do. I'm going to tell you how much the parts cost, and then you can decide for yourself of whether it's something that's worth saving the money on or whether you should bring it to the professionals. So starting now. So first thing I'm going to do is remove the cowling. Here. Pop off the cover. Some of these covers you have to take out some bolts. This one, the bolt's already kind of loose, so it just kind of sits down on them. And we're going to start over here on the port side. So the thermostat we're looking at for this particular engine is right here. So I'm going to unplug this cam position sensor and move some of these wires out of the way. And there are two bolts here and here. Two 10mm bolts. Alright, because this cam sensor plug is still some on the way, you are going to need kind of a universal joint. And what I found is they're kind of the good combination if I use a universal, but then I use a little spacer to kind of downsize to a smaller, like a 1/4 inch versus a 3/8. Gives me just the right thing to kind of get in there on that bolt. We should be able to pull this whole assembly aside. That actually looks really clean. It's not bad at all. You can tell this engine's been well maintained. Oh, trust me, you should see some of the ones that I've seen come out of boats. tuck these wires back in here. plug this back in. And these wires back in the clip there. So we're going to unclip cam sensor on this side. Some wires we can potentially move out of the way. Just don't want to drop it, so I'm being a little careful with it. So the way you get that off is you push it forward a little bit and turn it off. And it was under pressure, so got a little bit in the face. Not too much. Good thing I'm wearing my eyeglasses. And if we move these out of the way, it exposes both pretty easily right there. So again, two 10mm bolts. That out of the way. Again, a little bit of corrosion, a little bit of gunk, but overall, pretty clean. Just clean out a little bit here. It's a little, no. A little bit more on this side. I've got the new one. Put that in. Get all nice and snug in there. And put everything back together. We're going to reattach the fuel line. We plug in the cam position sensor. And put the cover back on. Tap. And last the cowl. Okay, so the parts for the thermostats, they were $32.95 each. There's two of them, so it was $65.90. And it took me 30 minutes. But it's called 31 minutes. So it took me a little bit longer than I thought it would have, because there was a couple things I didn't know whether I should take them off or not. And so I kind of, took them off, moved them aside a little bit, and then actually struggled a little bit with the fuel line, getting that red clip back on, and I actually dropped it a few times into the engine, so I had to kind of dig it out. But what I found was easiest if you put the red clip back on it before you try to put it back on the engine, and then just kind of spread it apart. But I was putting the hose on and then trying to put the clip on, and that probably took me a good 5 minutes. So it's probably, if I was to do it again, I could probably do the job in probably 20 minutes. I did have to spend some time kind of figuring out the right combination between the right size extension and having the universal and the right size socket and the thinness of the socket, because at first the socket I was using was too thick, and if I went to a longer socket, the length of the longer socket was hitting the plug for the cam sensor. So it took me again probably another like 3 to 4 minutes to find the right combination of what I wanted to do to attach those bolts. So now that I know this is, if you already have this set up, you can probably save 10 minutes of time by not kind of doing some of the things that were slowing me down. So I'd probably estimate the job somewhere in the 20 to 30 minute range. Price of, let's call it $66. Difficulty, not difficult at all. Just a little time consuming. If your engine's a little different, you're gonna have to figure out what you have to take off to get those bolts. This was also last serviced 2 years ago, so the thermostats came out relatively easy. I didn't have to do much prying or pulling apart to get at them. Getting them back in was easy, putting things back together was easy. So do-it-yourself job, absolutely. I mean, pretty much needed these 3 tools, with the exception that I used this bolt extractor three times to get some of the bolts out. But with this set of tools right here, an hour worth of your time, under $100, you can change your impeller and thermostats by yourself. So I'm going to give this one a thumbs up. This is a do-it-yourself job.